Across the vast expanse of biblical writings, where every word seems laden with profound meaning, certain passages stand out for their brevity and enigmatic quality, stirring vague yet persistent unease. These concern the Nephilim, colossal beings whose immense presence, according to ancient traditions, left an indelible mark on human history before the Great Flood. For most readers, these verses pass unnoticed, like strange artifacts lost amid the layered complexity of sacred scripture. Yet, for those willing to look deeper, those unafraid to ask questions that transcend conventional understanding, these fragments reveal something far more significant than first appears. Among the many unsettling questions they provoke, one is rarely voiced aloud. If giants truly existed, where were their female counterparts? Did giantesses exist? And if so, why are they absent from both canonical texts and even the boldest hypotheses of traditional archaeology? Were they erased from collective memory by time, or was their omission deliberate? In this inquiry, we will venture down lesser-known paths, examining ancient manuscripts, marginal texts, and often overlooked testimonies to determine whether colossal women once walked the earth. Should their existence be substantiated, it could radically reshape our understanding of the Nephilim and their influence on pre-flood humanity. The Nephilim occupy a central place in the fiercest biblical and historical debates, captivating both scholars and inquisitive explorers alike. Their image evokes both awe and anxiety, as it challenges the very boundaries of human comprehension. Scripture states that these giants emerged from the union between the so-called sons of God, identified in ancient traditions as the Watchers, and human women. This account first appears in Genesis 6 and echoes in other writings, such as the Book of Jude. Herein lies the deepening mystery. If a hybrid race of giants existed, did it include a female counterpart? Did women of extraordinary stature share the earth with male giants? This question gains urgency when we observe that, whether in scripture, apocryphal texts, or ancient mythologies, the giant is almost invariably depicted as male. Even across widely separated cultures, the archetype of the colossus rarely assumes a feminine form. Thus, the silence surrounding giantesses remains one of antiquity's most intriguing puzzles. This absence may suggest not that such figures never existed, but that they were omitted, distorted, or symbolically concealed. And it is precisely this void, more than any explicit statement, that casts long shadows over the true nature of the Nephilim and over what was ultimately preserved versus what was excluded from the narratives that have reached us. For some ancient interpreters, Scripture's silence on this matter is no accident, but a reflection of a world narrated overwhelmingly from a male perspective. In this context, giants are described as men, not only because of their strength or dominance, but because they embody archetypes of power within the symbolic and mythological framework of their time. The lack of female figures, then, would not signify non-existence, but narrative invisibility. Other scholars, however, hear in this silence something deeper. They argue that the complete absence of any mention of giantesses is not merely literary, but theological. Perhaps these figures were never part of the established order. Perhaps they were biologically or cosmologically impossible within the bounds of creation. Or perhaps their existence was deemed so aberrant that it was not even worthy of record. In this view, the text remains silent not because it cannot. Far from closing the debate, this gap has become one of the most compelling enigmas in ancient scripture. For centuries, attentive readers, theologians, and seekers of biblical mysteries have grappled with this question. The nature of the Nephilim and the possibility of their female counterparts has fueled interpretations ranging from conservative orthodoxy to daring speculation. None offers definitive proof. None settles the matter. The mystery endures. We are left with hypotheses, echoes of ancient traditions, and narrative fragments preserved outside the biblical canon. One of the most prevalent theories holds that the Nephilim were hybrid beings born of the forbidden union between the Watchers, angels who transgressed their ordained boundaries, and human women. If such a union was possible, then, at least theoretically, the existence of giantesses cannot be dismissed. But how would they have been conceived? Would they have inherited the same strength and tragic fate? Or did they occupy a hidden role, later erased from collective memory? From this perspective, the Nephilim cease to be merely oversized men and become entities outside the natural order, products of a crossing between fundamentally different natures. This would explain not only their extraordinary strength, but also their exceptional longevity. Scripture records lifespans of 500 to 900 years. Methuselah lived 969 years, Noah 950, and these figures were already considered extraordinary. Proponents of the hybrid theory argue that the Nephilim's biological and spiritual constitution place them beyond even these limits, possibly granting them lifespans up to 3 times longer than ordinary humans of their era. This remarkable longevity, however, likely came at a hidden and perhaps tragic cost. According to some traditions, as these hybrid beings aged, the vital force that sustained their colossal bodies did not always translate into the ability to generate offspring. Over time, the flame of fertility dimmed, cutting off any possibility of natural succession. In this interpretation, the Nephilim were not just hybrids, they were a branch doomed to extinction from the moment of their emergence. If this hypothesis holds, giants could not have produced offspring among themselves. There would be no lineage, no continuity. Their end would have been inscribed in their very essence. Within this logic, the idea of giantesses loses practical relevance. If the Nephilim were sterile, a female counterpart would serve neither biological nor historical purpose. Thus, they would have arisen as a temporary deviation from the order of creation, permitted for a time, yet destined to vanish without heirs. It is here that one of the greatest divergences on this issue emerges. Was the giants' sterility a real limitation imposed by their hybrid nature? Or are we confronting yet another silent omission in ancient narratives? Were giantesses biologically impossible, or simply erased from recorded memory? These questions continue to divide scholars, with no final answers in sight. Yet a second perspective challenges this conclusion and reopens the debate. According to this view, antiquity may have known not only male giants, but also women of comparable stature, giantesses who walked alongside these colossal beings, sharing their origin, their strength, and perhaps their fate. This theory arises from a simple, almost inescapable logic. If giants truly stood 3 to 5 meters tall, as ancient traditions suggest, then unions with ordinary-sized human women would have been physically improbable. The radical disparity in body size would have made such relationships highly problematic, leading to the conclusion that if reproduction occurred, it would have Sex 2.0. Thus, the existence of giantesses would cease to be fantasy and instead become a functional necessity in that ancient world. This hypothesis gains further strength when we consider the role of women in biblical and historical narratives. Genealogies rarely mention them, not because they were irrelevant, but because the world that recorded history was deeply patriarchal. Names, inheritance, and memory were transmitted through male lines. Women, though essential to the continuation of life, were often relegated to the margins of the text. This invisibility was not an exception, but the rule. Narratives celebrated male deeds, battles, and lineages, while female figures were pushed to the periphery of historical record. Therefore, the absence of giantesses in Scripture may signify not non-existence, but silence. Many scholars, interpreting ancient passages about giants, note that Scripture's silence on giantesses may be directly tied to the very structure of the society in which these texts were written. A deeply patriarchal world where names, deeds, and genealogies were preserved almost exclusively through men. What did not serve the affirmation of authority, lineage, or dominance was seldom recorded. Thus, the lack of references to female giants should not be read as a denial of their existence, but as a reflection of the narrative constraints of an era that documented only what it deemed essential. Within this framework, the possibility of giantesses emerges not merely as a biological hypothesis, but as a coherent reading of biblical silence. Scripture frequently mentions sons, men, and male lineages, while women remain hidden between the lines, even when they played fundamental roles in human history. Consequently, the erasure of female giants may tell us more about the authors of these texts. If we accept that giantesses could have lived, this theory offers a broader understanding of how the Nephilim were perpetuated. Rather than arising from isolated events, giants would have been part of a more complex system involving unions, generations, and continuity. Even if surviving records focus exclusively on males, female lineages would have been equally crucial to the expansion of this hybrid race, one that spanned epochs and left deep imprints on humanity's collective memory. This understanding finds echoes in the mythologies of many ancient peoples. Across distant cultures, giants rarely appear alone. In Greek tradition, the Titans were not mere brute forces. They formed families, had spouses, and produced powerful offspring. In Norse legends and other ancestral traditions, women of extraordinary height and strength appear as natural components of the mythic world. These parallels suggest that the idea of giants accompanied by female figures belonged to a shared ancient imagination, not a later invention. Thus, the exclusion of giantesses from biblical texts can be understood as a direct consequence of the narrative focus of that era, which exalted male authority and patriarchal transmission of name and inheritance. Women, whether human or otherwise, were often consigned to the shadows not due to irrelevance, but as a result of cultural choice. In this case, silence does not erase existence, it merely conceals it. Ultimately, this interpretation reinforces the idea that absence from historical records does not equate to non-existence. For many adherents of this view, giantesses undoubtedly played a significant role in the story of the Nephilim, even if their names were never spoken. Their omission from Scripture, they argue, stems more from narrative selection. Yet a third perspective, distinct from the previous two, emerges from ancient reflections on the possible sterility of the giants. Engaging with earlier interpretations, this theory introduces crucial refinements. According to it, hybrid beings, despite their extraordinary power and longevity, were constrained by the very nature of their origin. Just as early humans like Adam, Noah, and Methuselah lived for centuries, the giants, by virtue of their unique constitution, may have far exceeded even these temporal limits. Such extreme longevity would have rendered reproduction unnecessary. From this standpoint, the absence of giantesses in the texts would not reflect cultural exclusion, but rather a simple lack of reproductive need among beings whose presence in the world did not depend on offspring. This possibility opens the door to understanding giants not merely as colossal embodiments of physical strength, but as entities of astonishingly prolonged existence, beings whose presence spanned multiple human generations without the need for descendants. In this light, giants begin to appear not only as figures of immense power, but as entities transcending ordinary human boundaries. Some texts and traditions even hint at their potential immortality, or at least an exceptional longevity that allowed them to endure for centuries, perhaps millennia, without producing direct heirs. Their persistence in the world would depend not on natural succession, but on an almost unnatural resistance to time, as if the very clock of creation moved more slowly for them. This interpretation becomes even more compelling when we note that giants reappear in Scripture even after the flood. The deluge is described as total and all-encompassing, intended to wipe every living being from the earth. Yet generations later, records again mention giants, raising a troubling question. How could something so ancient and condemned survive the greatest act of purification ever described? Among scholars who support this view, the most common explanation points to the return of the Watchers, the fallen angels, after the flood. According to this hypothesis, even after divine judgment, these beings once again descended to earth and repeated their ancient transgression, once more uniting with human women. From this renewed violation arose a second manifestation of the Nephilim, distinct from the first, yet equally marked by strength, violence, and spiritual imbalance. But this time, something had changed. The world's tolerance seemed exhausted, and the age of giants was drawing to a close. After the flood, giants remain fearsome figures, but their presence grows increasingly rare. Warfare intensifies, kings rise against them, and battles are waged not only against men, but also against what remains of an ancient race. A striking example appears in the description of a primitive war in which several peoples unite to confront various groups of giants. The biblical text testifies that, despite their strength, they were defeated. For the first time, giants cease to be mere symbols of terror and begin to be seen as vulnerable. This pattern recurs throughout Scripture. The famous story of a young shepherd facing a colossal warrior is not the only such account in sacred texts. It reflects a broader process, the slow decline of a once dominant lineage. Goliath represents the last peak of a bloodline that no longer ruled the world as it once had. His fall was not merely the triumph of an extraordinary man, but a sign that an era was drawing to a close. Though imposing and revered, Goliath was no longer invincible. His defeat symbolically marked the end of. Yet even as giants gradually vanished from the biblical stage, their memory remained vivid in ancient cultures. Many of these beings continued to be remembered as nearly divine figures, primordial heroes or agents of fate. Mythologies around the world preserved echoes of this memory. Giants appear as builders of civilizations, legendary warriors, and figures who moved between the human and the divine. This reverence reveals not only awe, but also an acknowledgement of a power that, to ancient peoples, transcended human comprehension, a grandeur that still resonates in the collective imagination. In many of these ancient cultures, giants occupied a space not only of fear, but also of reverence. They were seen as beings who walked the boundary between the human world and the divine. When narratives describe encounters between humans and giants, they almost always do so with an atmosphere of silent awe, as if the very presence of these beings served as a reminder of forces beyond ordinary understanding. They were not merely monsters. They were living signs of an ancient order that predated known civilizations. In Greek mythology, the tension between the old and the new order is vividly portrayed in tales of great battles between generations of powerful beings. The Titanomachy, the grand conflict between the young Olympian gods and the primordial Titans, symbolizes the struggle of a new cosmic order against an ancient force unwilling to fade into oblivion. In these stories, giants are not simply enemies to be destroyed, but embodiments of a bygone era, infused with raw power, grandeur, and chaos. Victory over them signifies not only physical superiority, but also the replacement of an old world with a new one striving for harmony and balance. In this context, the titans and giants of mythology may not have been purely symbolic figures, but rather ancient peoples, scattered after catastrophic events like the Great Flood, may have preserved these recollections in various forms. Over generations, what was once oral history transformed, became mythologized, and was enriched by local cultural elements, giving rise to pantheons of gods, epic wars, and captivating narratives. The biblical tradition also reflects this ambiguity. Giants emerge from the forbidden union between the sons of God and the daughters of men, bearing both a divine imprint and the frailty of flesh. They inspire both fear and a certain fascination. Their existence testifies to a world where the supernatural was still deeply interwoven with the human, a world where boundaries were blurred and inevitable consequences followed their transgression. Yet over time, the presence of giants gradually fades from historical narratives. This disappearance is not sudden, but resembles the slow dimming of an ancient flame. Wars, successive defeats, and the weakening of bloodlines associated with these beings mark the close of an entire cycle. As human civilizations gain strength, giants cease to be central figures in the cosmic order and recede to the periphery of collective memory, becoming legends, symbols, and warnings. This decline does not mean that giants were invincible. On the contrary, sacred texts carefully demonstrate their limitations. Encounters like David's battle with Goliath are not merely tales of improbable victory. They reveal a deeper truth. Strength without purpose does not guarantee endurance. Many interpreters see in these confrontations something greater than physical combat. They perceive an allegory of faith versus arrogance, obedience versus rebellion. Thus, the fall of the giants symbolizes more than the end of a race. It reflects a transition from a world governed by fear. The emergence of human heroes in the face of these colossal figures signifies the triumph of courage, faith, and submission to God's will over unrestrained and aimless power. This historical and spiritual context opens space for even deeper reflection on the nature of giants and their relationship with humanity. Some ancient traditions suggest that at certain points, these beings entered into unions with human women, producing hybrid offspring, further deepening the mystery surrounding their origins and paving the way for later interpretations. Yet the concept of female giants, giantesses, remains shrouded in silence and contradiction in ancient sources. Records preserved over centuries focus almost exclusively on male giants, their deeds, battles, and strength, while possible female figures of this lineage remain hidden, unnamed, and undescribed. This narrative void raises a fundamental question. Does it indicate non-existence or omission? In Scripture, as in many ancient texts, history is told from a deeply patriarchal perspective. Genealogies emphasize fathers and sons, kings, warriors, and heroes dominate the narrative focus, while women, even when playing pivotal roles, appear only peripherally. In this light, the absence of giantesses may reflect less a biological reality and more a cultural bias, a narrative choice that prioritized the male as the bearer of memory, name, and power. Given this, it is reasonable to ask whether textual silence truly equals denial. The lack of explicit mention is not definitive proof that giantesses never existed. Rather, it may point to the limitations imposed by the perspectives of those who recorded these stories. Perspectives shaped by the social structures, religious values, and literary conventions of their time. To advance this reflection, we must look beyond literal readings and consider the cultural, historical, debates about the possible existence of giantesses, and even of giant societies comprising both sexes, remain active among scholars, theologians, and researchers of ancient traditions. Some propose that relationships between giants and humans may have been far more complex than mere conflict, possibly involving alliances, coexistence, and even mixed lineages. Other theories expand the horizon even further, suggesting that giants were hybrid beings, born of the union between the divine and the human, an idea present not only in biblical tradition but also in the mythologies of many cultures. This interpretation views giants as symbols of violated boundaries, yet also as witnesses to a time when heaven and earth seemed closer together. Now, we invite you to reflect on these questions. What do you think of these captivating stories about giants? Do you consider it possible that these colossal beings truly existed, even if ancient chronicles may have remained silent about them? Or perhaps you lean toward the idea that giants, both male and female, could have formed complete families, clans, or even unique communities of their own. It may even seem logical to you that these beings were hybrids, harmoniously blending human and divine traits. We eagerly await your thoughts in the comments. If this fascinating journey through the mysteries of giants, revealed in sacred texts and ancient traditions, has enriched your worldview and expanded your understanding, we kindly ask you to show your support by liking this material and sharing it. In doing so, you will help more people join this profound reflection. In this future, also noticed accompaniently favoritely transported. In doing so, you will help more people liking this materials. In doing so, you will help the more people let the guide point to the people with liking this material and sharing it. In doing so, you will help more people at the giants between giants and humans and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the guide point to the people with liking this material and sharing it. In doing so, you will help more people let the guide point to the people with liking this material and sharing it. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and humans and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and humans and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and humans and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. It may even seem logical to you the comments at this point said, if this thoughts about them, will not available to change this questions, but looking for a lot of settable of this questions. What if you truly wait as this placed about them when you can't relate? In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. We eagerly await you to show your through that these provide of giants and systems by farther further from using. When the mystery of giants may that giants decide may not do them. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. We eagerly await you to show your through that these provide of giants and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. In doing so, you will help more people that the giants between giants and revealed in the comments. Amongst fascinating journey through the mysteries of giants, revealed in sacred texts and ancient traditions, has this profound reflection, which intricately weaves together faith, historical insight, and sacred imagination. And of course, stay with us. The next video in this series, available immediately after this episode, promises new revelations and theories that will undoubtedly stir your soul. May God's blessing be upon you. And until we meet again.